Pac-12 has had a lot of really good teams this year. It's really, really deep. You have 7 teams right now with 7 or more wins. When was the last time it was this good, and why is it this good? Let's go.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with our beloved Conference of Champions, which is why, if you haven't already, please continue to like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by Omaha Steaks, a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Order with complete confidence today, knowing you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com. Use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. And I am joined once again today here on Locked On Pac-12 by, I imagine, a jubilant Carter Bahns of beaverblitz.com. He had a pretty good up and down Saturday afternoon. There were highs, there were lows. It ended in a high. But Carter, just real quick, a mood check for you on a personal level there, my friend. How's it going?
Jubilant seems about right. I think that works. I don't have my chainsaw with me today. It's over on the table over there. But
Vroom vroom.
Vroom vroom. Yeah. But what a roller coaster of a game, a roller coaster of emotions, highs and lows for both teams on Saturday at Reser Stadium, and an absolute classic. I went into this game saying, man, this has instant classic potential. Vegas kind of said the same thing with how that line moved at the very last minute.
That was everything about it was crazy.
The Pac-12 refs said, yeah, let's make this thing an instant classic. No, man, that was unbelievable all the way around. Just a remarkable game.
Yeah, it was an amazing college football game and a rivalry game to boot. We'll get to the ramifications from that later. But you and I were talking before we came on here to record the show about, the depth of the Pac-12, and it's really deep. It's really deep. A few weeks ago, there were 3 teams legitimately with a shot at the college football playoff in the Pac-12, USC, UCLA, and Oregon. Since then, they've all done what the Pac-12 always does. They've cannibalized themselves. By the way, Washington would be in that mix if they hadn't lost to, checks notes, Arizona State. Like, how do you explain that? That's the most Pac-12 thing of all Pac-12 things. We also play a 9-game conference schedule, unlike those cowards in the SEC. But anyway, so I really think that this has been an exceptional year. I'm so excited for bowl season because I want to see these Pac-12 teams go on national television and put up a good mark. After the last couple of years have been really, really bad, I think you could have some good matchups because there are going to be some good teams playing in some, lower tier, quote unquote, bowl games or whatever against opponents that I think they could beat. But we were looking at it, Cart. This is really kind of the deepest the conference has been when you're going top to bottom quality of teams and with the number of good teams you have at the top since like 2012, 2013. There have been some good years, but that year you had 4 teams end the season, including their bowl game with 10 wins. You could very easily have that this year because you've got UCLA, Oregon State, Oregon, all sitting at 9 wins right now. And Utah, by the way, all sitting at 9 wins. And then Washington and USC are already at double-digit wins. You could look up at the end of the year and go, man, the Pac-12's got a lot of good teams where Washington State is team number 7. It's been remarkable.
Yeah, you bring up the whole, good teams playing in lower-tier bowls in quotes thing, and I use that as kind of a test of, all right, how deep is the conference? Because I go back to 2012, the last time Oregon State finished the regular season at 9-3, the Beavers played in the Alamo Bowl that year, which obviously is that's the number 2 bowl in the Pac-12. So if you're a 9-win Oregon State team going to that bowl that year, but then you look up this year and you say, wow, we're going where? We're going to El Paso potentially. You could see a 9-win Oregon State team rank in the top 15 and go to the Sun Bowl because there's 5 teams ahead of it in the Pac-12 standings that, in bowl selection processes look more attractive for various reasons. But I think that speaks more to the depth of the conference this year and where it's come from years past. Obviously, like you said, this is a conference that likes to cannibalize itself a little bit. So, very often you see a 9-win team lose to a 3-6 team in conference play or something like that. But this year there has been less of it. Arizona State beating Washington is a prime example. I think Arizona UCLA is somewhat on the same boat there.
I completely agree.
But that's two cases, and that's really it. And teams like Oregon State stepping up, UCLA taking that next step as well, Washington getting back to prominence. You saw a lot of programs take a step forward this year, but nobody really took a step back. So I think that's why you're seeing more high-end teams at the top, but also the middle of the pack is quite a bit stronger than it has been in years past.
Well, Colorado took a step back, unfortunately, and we're actually going to talk about Colorado later in the show because coaching candidates are starting to fall into place here. Colorado's has not yet at this point in time. But when I think about why the conference is where it is, Carter, where you have legitimate national pundits like Joel Klatt, for instance, saying the Pac-12 is the second or third best conference in the country, whereas 5-6 years ago or so, or really even just maybe even less than that, you would have said, well, no, it's number 4 at best. Maybe it's better than the ACC. It's way better than the ACC, I think. I think it's been stronger. It's deeper than the Big Ten. I think it's with USC there at the top. I think it's 100% better top to bottom than the Big Ten, and it's certainly better than the Big 12. So you look up and say, like, okay, maybe the Big Ten's ahead of it, but I don't know. With USC in there, kind of feels like they're in that category. But the way that this has happened, Carter, I think has been pretty simple. They've brought in a lot of really good quarterbacks, and they're making good coaching hires. And we'll see if the teams that have to hire new coaches now, Arizona State, of course, bringing in Kenny Dillingham. We'll be talking about that tomorrow here on the show with my guy, Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils. You're making good coaching hires. Whereas from 2014 to 2020, we saw Clay Helton at USC. We saw Gary Anderson at Oregon State. I'm sorry I even brought it up. Yeah, I know. That's not the mood that Oregon State fans are in right now, but I think you've been making the right coaching hires, the right coaching moves, and you've been bringing in high-level players, particularly this year at the quarterback position.
I see your Gary Anderson and raise you a Willie Taggart there as well. No, when you were discussing this, I was thinking internally, man, this comes back to coaching and it comes back to quarterbacks, and you hit on both of them. For one, coaching. Look at what Kalen DeBoer has done in year 1 at Washington. Look at what
Lincoln Riley.
Yes, look at what Jonathan Smith has done over 4, now going on 5 years at Oregon State. Lincoln Riley coming in right away, turning that program around, or maximizing it, I guess is the better way of putting it. Chip Kelly building UCLA over a couple of years. I mean, these are great coaching performances. Kyle Whittingham, of course, is as steady as it comes at Utah. So
steady Eddie.
Exactly. Like the top half of this conference is just loaded with elite coaching, really. And as well as the quarterback position too. A lot of this has been done with the transfer portal. I mean, most of the starting quarterbacks in this conference are portal guys. Michael Penix
9.
Jr.,
I believe the number is 9.
Michael Penix Jr., Caleb Williams. I mean, the only guy who's actually homegrown and like legitimately good is Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Correct.
But like everybody else that is remotely good in this conference at the quarterback position is a transfer. So again, I think that partially goes back to the coaching situation as well, where, credit to the coaches for going and identifying that talent and landing it. No, it first and foremost comes back to the coaching. The Pac-12 has a much higher level of coaching from top to bottom right now than it did even 2-3 years ago. And you are seeing better play from the most important position on the field.
Yeah, the coaching hires have been tasty in a number of ways, kind of like Omaha Steaks. The steak expert at Omaha Steaks have put together special curated gift packages to help take the guesswork out of gifting and make you a holiday hero, because guess what? It's officially the holiday season. Christmas music, Christmas trees, Christmas lights, everything Christmas oriented. Yeah, that's all fair game in my view right now. Go to omahasteaks.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $30 off your order at checkout. Send an assortment of mouth-watering favorites guaranteed to impress, like the legendary's Butcher's Cut Filet Mignon, my personal favorite cut of steak, though there are many great options there. Air-chilled boneless chicken, ultra-juicy burgers, and even easy-to-prepare comfort meals that are ready in a flash. Omaha Steaks is a gift from the heart, a gift that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Order with complete confidence today, knowing you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com, use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. Minimum order may be required. I just think it really does come down to coaching, because look, like, go up and down. DeBoer at Washington, that looks like a home run. Lanning at Oregon, had some stumbles this year, but looks like a good hire. Did he come into a fortuitous situation? Yeah, so did Brent Venables. Look how that went. Like, when you have a guy who isn't it, who can't find it, it becomes very clear very soon. USC goes out and gets Lincoln Riley. Jonathan Smith at Oregon State has done a fantastic job. I think there is an element of, Oregon State and UCLA kind of culminating their rebuilds at the same time as to why the conference has been so good this year. But I look at other hires as well. Jake Dickert at Washington State. Does anybody want to play the Cougars? My hand is down. It is firmly down on my desk if I'm a third grader being asked that particular question, because I don't want to play Washington State, and I think they're a good team, and I think they got better and better as the year went on. I look at Jed Fish at Arizona. Yeah, it was really bad last year. It was a mess. They won 5 games this year. That's like the overperformance of the century. That might be overstating, of course, though the century is only 22 years old, so you never know and whatnot. But I just think there have been so many good hires, and look, I have a lot of respect for David Shaw. We're going to talk about him a little bit later here on the show, but I think it was time for him to move on. I'm glad that that's ending the way that it did. Colorado said, nope, this is not up to the standard that we have here as an institution. They're moving on from Carl Durrell. I question what Cal is doing with Justin Wilcox, but I don't think Wilcox is that bad of a coach. Like, if Justin Wilcox is your, well, let's see, 3 coaches were let go. So if he's your 9th best coach,
yeah, you'll take that.
I mean, that's just from a depth perspective. Justin Wilcox as your 9th best coach. That's a pretty good place to be as a league.
And he'll get a new offensive coordinator next year too, so we'll see what he can make of that. I think if he has to get that hire right.
Yes.
But if he does, I think Cal could finally maybe crack that top half of the conference, get out of the 5 to 6 win ceiling that they've been at since Wilcox got there. No, it's interesting that you do mention a couple of the coaches who have left as well, because David Shaw is one of those guys who I would have thrown in that conversation we just had about the elite coaches in this conference. It did kind of feel like his time was up, and I don't necessarily think it's his fault. I think it's more a testament to what the university has done or not done in this era of college football. I think, I would not be surprised to see David Shaw take a couple of years off from coaching, a la Urban Meyer or Chris Peterson, and get back into it, maybe at the NFL at some point. But I think anybody who lands David Shaw after this is going to be lucky, because I don't really think it's his fault that Stanford has taken a turn for the worse. But I'm glad you brought up Jed Fish as well, because we didn't talk about him as being one of those great coaches, but what he's done from year 1 to year 2, I mean,
they had a 20-game losing streak. 20 at a program that has been to 1 Pac-12 championship game, has been to 1 New Year's Six or BCS game since 2010, and that took place maybe 2. Might just be 1. I think it was with Anu Solomon in that year that they lost to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. So he's at a program that doesn't have a great history of winning at a high level. And yeah, they went 1-11 last year, but it was a competitive 1-11. It wasn't Colorado this year, right? Like, that's a completely different situation. And they're 1 win away from bowl eligibility. I mean, imagine, Carter, they could be 6-6 if their school had decided, no, we don't want to play Mississippi State. Let's back out and play, play Fordham or
Bowling Green
some
or something.
play somebody like that. They'd be 6-6 and going to a bowl. They could have done that. They chose not to. I respect them for not doing that, by the way. But I really just look up and down and am so optimistic, even with USC and UCLA departing, about the coaches you have there. Like, we've been talking about coaches for 15 minutes or so. We haven't even mentioned Kyle Whittingham, really. Like, that guy is just a really good coach. Like, Utah's never bad. They've never won fewer than 5 games since he's gotten into the league. Coming from a Mountain West school, like, it's just remarkable. And I think you have to credit the athletic directors at all these schools, because they're the ones who are leading the searches. They're the ones who are making the final decisions on, this is the guy we're going to hire to lead our football program. And I think just about everybody has done an exceptional job. I want to transition into those 2 coaching vacancies that remain now that Dillingham is at ASU. But as a senior writer and editor at BeaverBlitz.com, it would be a crime to all the Beaver fans who are out there, and I know there are several of you, and given my personal background, I appreciate you listening to or watching this show, but I watched that game, Carter, and of course on a personal level I felt many things, but once I had time to try and get it way out of my head, which I haven't yet, this is going to take a little while, I feel like for Oregon, it's not more. It's a bad loss. That's what it is. Not worried about the trajectory there. But for Oregon State, because you were down big, because you were at home, because Oregon was rolling, and that's a game where in previous years the Beavers might have thrown in the towel and said better luck next year maybe. It felt like to me, and I'm curious what you feel on the inside of that program there. I know you're very close to it. It feels like it has the potential to be worth more than just one win on a Saturday in the fall, electrifying though it was for the fans in Reser.
Yeah, it was kind of the pinnacle of this rebuild. It felt like the finishing touch on the process that has taken now 4 going on 5 full years to build it up from a 1-win program and a 2-win team from Jonathan Smith's first year to notching more and more wins on an annual basis, throwing out 2020. They have won. I go back. They went from 2 to 5 to 7 and now to 9 if you throw out COVID. So, they're improving by multiple wins every year. And you cap it off with a win like that in the fashion that you did it against a team of the caliber that you beat at home too, in front of countless recruiting visitors. I mean, this was the biggest recruiting weekend of the season for Oregon State. The reactions that I've heard from all of those visitors, the reactions that I saw in the Valley Football Center after that game went final, the reactions I saw on the field with players and fans, unlike anything I have seen at Oregon State as long as I've been covering the program. And I started covering it the first year that Jonathan Smith took over. So, this goes back to 2018. The emotion I saw after that game, the tears of joy, the laughter, just overall the emotions was unmatched. And that's players, that's coaches, that's fans. So it has the feeling of kind of, like I said, the pinnacle of the rebuild, but also something that Oregon State's going to be like, hey, we've seen the success. We don't want to take a step backward now. It feels like, okay, we're here. We've arrived. Now let's start competing for something greater. It has more of that feeling than all right, we did it, time to move on.
Yeah, I think the word arrival is accurate, because you make a great point that it's just been slow and methodical. And at a program like Oregon State, where you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a big national brand, you don't have, access to the sort of recruiting base that even like an Arizona or Arizona State would, right, in your backyard, it's a tough thing to build up. And when Jonathan Smith took it over, I mean, Carter, that team is comparable to this year's Colorado team, right? Like that's the equivalent here. Like, imagine Colorado, whoever they hire right now, 4 or 5 years down the line, they stick it out, they're there, and they end a 9-3 season with a big time out physicaling comeback win against Utah. That's what we're talking about here. It was so impressive. And then we're going to close on Oregon State with this thought, and I'm going to speak this into existence, Carter, because we've talked about it all year on the show. Oregon State is going to need a stopgap quarterback next year because I don't think anyone is expecting Aiden Childs to come in and be this world beater, incredible true freshman. Like, a year of development is warranted there. So what would you like to have if you're Oregon State? You'd like to have a veteran quarterback who can mentor him. You'd like to have a guy who can come in and play at a higher level than what you had at the quarterback position this year. That they went 9-3 with, Nolan throwing some really great passes and also a lot of bad interceptions. And then Ben Gulbranson, who we know is severely limited. He's like the Jimmy Garoppolo of quarterbacks, yeah, you can win with him, as long as you don't ask him to throw the ball very much at the quarterback position. The irony, yes, not lost on me and whatnot. But anyway, I think, and I texted this to a Beaver friend of mine during the game, Kade McNamara. I think that is a perfect fit. He's got experience. He knows how to win football games. He's going to be able to execute a pro-style offense. He is a better quarterback and will protect the ball better than Gulbranson and Nolan did this year. And that's the biggest thing that held Oregon State back. That is a 10-win caliber Oregon State team if they have better quarterback play this year. You could even make an argument for 11. Not even kidding. It's just not that ridiculous to say. And I think Kade McNamara, who's in the transfer portal, took Michigan to the college football playoff. He was in an offense that was run-centric and required him to be a high-level executor or game manager. And that's what this Oregon State offense needs to reach its full potential. It's rooted in the ground game. Carter, I think that is a match made in heaven. I think that's where Oregon State should go. There are other choices, sure. I think Kade McNamara is a great fit.
Kade McNamara is on Oregon State's radar. There are a couple of quarterbacks out there that I know the Beavers are interested in. Some have hit the portal officially. McNamara, of course, is going to be number one on a lot of teams' lists. But I don't think there's a team out there that would benefit more from a transfer portal quarterback at this juncture than Oregon State. In fact, I came into the season saying Oregon State at the time was a JT Daniels, what we thought JT Daniels was going to bring via the portal, away from being an 11-1 team or a 12-0 team. And I think now, looking back on how this season transpired, you can make the argument, like you said, the 3-point loss to USC, the 3-point loss to Washington. If you don't throw 4 picks at Utah, you could be an 11 or 12 win team with an above average quarterback.
I think 11's probably the cap. Winning in Salt Lake City, that's asking a lot. Like, Utah is still a very good football team, but I'm totally with you. It's at least 10 if JT Daniels is there.
Yeah, and if JT Daniels performs at the level that we all expected he would out of the portal. So look, Oregon State's offense, it does lose a couple of key guys. I think that offensive line is going to be great for years to come. The running back room is absolutely loaded. The weapons are still there. Oregon State does still need the quarterback, but he will have elite guys to hand it off to, and he will have elite protection. So if they can bring it in, that's the key to getting this offense to take the next step. The defense, I don't have any concerns about. In fact, today, as we record this, Trent Bray was just extended through 2024. And as long as he's there, I think this defense is going to be one of the best in the conference. So really, with everything that comes back, with the coaching continuity, I think the one thing that you look at that needs to change is the quarterback position, and the transfer portal is going to be the key to do it. Because like we just said, Aiden Childs is probably not going to be the answer as a 17-year-old freshman.
Yeah, and I think they could maybe use another perimeter weapon or two. Oregon just had a good wide receiver go into the transfer portal, Dante Thornton. Oregon State has taken a good offensive skill position player from the Ducks before they did with Thomas Tyner back when the Beavs were struggling. Like, I think that'd be a good weapon to have. Like, there are plenty of other options on that front, but to me, that's really all that's missing. The offensive line, great. Running backs, amazing. Defense, really good. You need better quarterback play. That's number one. And then maybe another weapon or two on the perimeter who's Trayshawn Harrison is good. I think he's better as a number 2 than as a true number 1. If you had a guy who you could, rely on from time to time to go out there and just, you say, hey, we're going to put you on an island You're going to go one-on-one and run a slant route. We need to pick up 3rd down and 5. I think that, can just add just a tiny little extra dimension there. But I don't want college football to end because it's my favorite sport in the world, as all of you can probably tell. But I am so excited for the number of possibilities. The transfer portal opens on December 5th. It's going to be a madhouse in there. It's going to be absolutely nuts. But I want to close the day with those 2 coaching vacancies that still remain in the Pac-12, Stanford and Colorado. Colorado has reportedly offered Deion Sanders the job. He has not yet accepted as we record this on Monday night. I think that'd be a good hire for Colorado, if not only that it would make them interesting. Deion Sanders is interesting. He is a big personality. He is a well-known name. He also appears to be a good football coach. He'd probably be able to recruit at a place where you don't have a ton of recruits in your backyard. You don't have a strong national brand right now. And I think there could be some upside there for the Buffs. He'd be going up against a lot of good coaches in the Pac-12, sure. But I think I'm interested in that name for Colorado. I still like Paul Chryst because I think that, the Wisconsin and Colorado jobs are similar where you have to do more with less. To some extent, I think you have a little more at Wisconsin, but I mean, not a total ton for sure. I think those are interesting names, but Deion Sanders, that'd be a good hire for the Buffs, right?
I think so. And it's weird because Deion Sanders is not a natural fit for Colorado, whatsoever, in my opinion. But, usually when we talk about teams making hires and we're like, wait, really? That seems like an odd fit. We say that in a negative way, but I feel like this could be an odd hire in a good way for Colorado for the reasons you just laid out. It would make them relevant. It would make them interesting. I think you get the recruiting piece with Deion there. I think he would absolutely generate some interest from boosters and I think could get the athletic department to really buy into this program again.
How do you not buy into Deion Sanders? You just look at him smile and you're like, I don't know what he's saying, but I agree with him.
But I'll say this, if it falls through, there have been a couple of names that, it might not be on anybody's hot board and they might not have even reached out to these guys. I don't know. But I feel like Brian Harsin could kind of be a quiet, solid fit for Colorado. I think Tom Herman could come back to coaching and be a good fit there. Having coached at Houston, a smaller school, lower resources. I think those are 2 good football coaches who have proven that they can win and build programs up. Obviously, they were let go from their most recent jobs for reasons a little bit out of their control. So I think Colorado has solid fallback options out there if they don't get Deion. But I mean, obviously, if any school that brings in Deion Sanders is going to be interesting, and I would kind of like to see that happen in the Pac-12.
I don't think Deion Sanders has a chance of being a candidate at the Stanford head coaching opening because nothing about that, that's the sort of odd fit you were talking about where it's like, okay, that just doesn't work. But David Shaw's not there. I will give endless shout outs to David Shaw because I watched him win a lot of football games in this conference. We all forget now, but for a good, 6 years or so, Stanford was creme de la creme in this league, and they were really good, and they were really annoying to play against. And you can argue that it's passed them by, whether or not it's passed David Shaw by with NIL and the transfer portal and just the grind of recruiting and whatnot, or whether or not it's passed Stanford by. I think we're going to see that question get answered with whoever they hire as the next coach, but I don't have a feel here. It's early, of course, Carter, but I don't think there's an obvious hire for Stanford because they're not going to just go hire anybody, because one of the reasons they kept Shaw around longer than other programs might have is that he is such a good guy. That's why I will give him endless shout-outs. I'd be surprised if he's ever even said a swear word. I mean, the guy has got an impeccable reputation. I hope he goes and joins the Pac-12 network. I think he'd be a great analyst on there. He's really good on camera. But what's your feel on this Stanford job? Because I feel like it's not the best job in the world right now, and for several reasons. Yeah, I don't think there's. So that leads me to think there's not really an obvious hire. What do you make of it?
No, I'm in the same boat. I don't look at one or two guys and say, oh, he makes some sense. Or, the guys that I just named for Colorado with Herman and Harsin, like those aren't Stanford fits. Some of the coaches who have been let go across, like Paul Christ, I don't know, maybe like Stanford is just
I
such
could see
a
Christ. I could maybe
Stanford's
see
just
Christ
such
at
a
Stanford.
yeah. I mean, it makes a little more sense than some of the other ones out there, but it's such a unique university and program and athletic
Yeah.
department, and it's going to take the absolute perfect home run hire to actually get Stanford back to where David Shaw took it for, like you said, half a decade plus. But I just think that the job itself is not attractive anymore. Where we're at in college football with all of the things that have transpired recently and the developments and the step forwards that this sport has taken, Stanford has fallen behind at a rate that I don't think is matched anywhere. Georgia Tech has fallen off a little bit in that same way. Colorado, in our conference as well. Even Cal to an extent, but nowhere as much as Stanford have you seen the game pass it by as much. And I think until you get that institutional support, it might not really matter who they bring in. My two cents there.
It's a fascinating situation to follow because of this era of change that we are undergoing in college sports, and whether or not they're on an institutional level, like you said, going to commit to it. Whatever happens on that front, we'll be covering it here on the show. Myself and my man Carter Bahns, everybody else who comes on the show, but we appreciate Carter coming on as always. Good to talk. There's so much to talk about. Oh my gosh. I mean, we could have done a 90-minute show. That's not how we roll here at the Locked On Podcast Network, but 90-minute show would have been a piece of cake. Carter, good to talk to you, man.
We'll have to do it sometime. Maybe just off air. Just roll hour and a half. See what happens.
Yeah, so many things would be said. Maybe too many things. All right, that's it. See you next time. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day.